Chapter Every Man Has His Responsibility. Zhang Yi complained in his heart. The headquarters was really cunning. At this time, they still didn't give them the best weapons and equipment. But after thinking about it carefully, it made sense. After all, if those weapons appeared in the outer city, they would be artifact level. If they were distributed in large quantities, they might cause disputes in the future and might also lead to technology leaks. Understanding is understanding, but Zhang Yi has always been a bastard who doesn't take advantage of opportunities. He approached Bailey Chongqing and whispered, "No matter what they do, you have to make a set of black tights for Liang Yu and me. With our friendship, this is okay, right?" Bailey Chongqing looked a little embarrassed. Those are all controlled-level equipment and can't be given to others easily. Especially the battle suits, which are high-tech products, and I can't give them to you. Zhang Yi asked for 2 sets right away, which made it difficult for him. Zhang Yi's eyes widened. Difficult? Then don't do it. Bailey Chongqing smiled and waved his hands. Don't be angry. Although this matter is troublesome, it is not impossible to discuss. If it were someone else, Bailey Chongqing would have to consider the possibility of his death on the battlefield. But for Zhang Yi, there is no need to worry about this. In the entire Blizzard City, there are not many people who really understand Zhang Yi's strength. He, Bailey Chongqing, is definitely the one who knows it best. Because Zhang Yi told him personally that his strength is no less than that of the deceased Captain Bian Junwu. Combined with Zhang Yi's usual cowardly behavior, it is harder than climbing to the sky to kill him. Then tell me, what should we do? Zhang Yi asked. Bailey Chongqing looked around, pulled Zhang Yi to an empty corner, and whispered, "I will give you my and Meng Xiu's battle suits first. But when you come back, you must return them to us. As for weapons, you all have your own exclusive ones, so there is no need to ask me for them." Zhang Yi saw Bailey Chongqing's serious expression, and he also understood how rare the black tights were. Although it was a pity that he couldn't ask for 10 or 8 sets to take back. But being able to get 2 sets to wear can greatly improve their survival rate in the mission, which is still good. Okay, then it's settled. Zhang Yi returned to the armory and pretended to select some equipment. The others also selected their own weapons, and they were fully armed. Although these standard weapons used by the Yanyan Special Forces were relatively ordinary to Zhang Yi, they were all excellent things for them. After everyone had chosen their weapons, Bailey Chongqing said to them, "Now, everyone stay in the combat center and wait. Someone will take you there when the time comes." The combat center is relatively large, so there is naturally a rest area. So the aliens in the outer city separated in 2s and 3s. Some of them discussed the next tactics with serious expressions, and some went to recuperate and prepare for the next battle. Zhang Yi called Liang Yu mysteriously and followed Bailey Chongqing to the special rest area of their Black Robe investigation team. Bailey Chongqing asked Meng Xiu for her battle suit and gave his suit to Zhang Yi. The battle suit is intelligently shrinkable, so there will be no mismatch in body shape. Go change clothes next door first. Zhang Yi handed Meng Xiu's battle suit to Liang Yu. Liang Yu had seen this black battle suit and had heard Zhang Yi talk about its magic. When she got the battle suit, she couldn't help but secretly thought in her heart, Zhang Yi actually asked for such a thing. It's really amazing. She took her battle suit and went to the women's locker room next door without making a sound. Zhang Yi went to the men's locker room and began to take off his clothes. At this moment, Bailey Chongqing walked in from outside. Zhang Yi turned around and met his eyes with a bit of vigilance. "What are you doing here?" At this time, he had just taken off his shirt, revealing his muscular upper body. After the end of the world, he would not neglect to exercise every day, so his body was very fit, and there was almost no fat on his body. Bailey Chongqing smiled and waved his hand. "Don't get me wrong, I just want to chat with you before you leave." As he said, he folded his arms and leaned against the wall. Zhang Yi said calmly, "If you have any questions, just ask." Bailey Chongqing's expression became serious. He frowned slightly, stared at Zhang Yi and said, "What are your plans for this operation? The headquarters doesn't know your strength, and they arranged the operation for you as an ordinary alien. But I know your strength is definitely not inferior to Deng Shintong. So, you plan to take action at the critical moment, take down Eclipse Moon, and take all the credit?" Zhang Yi had already changed into a tights. After hearing Bailey Chongqing's words, he looked playful. Do you think I look like that kind of person? Quite like. Bailey Chongqing nodded without hesitation. That's how you played in Tianhai City before. Zhang Yi. Thinking about it carefully, it seems to be true. Pretending to be weak at first, and then waiting for the right opportunity to appear, and then reaping the fruits of victory. Zhang Yi shook his head. At the beginning, I wanted to eliminate Yuan Kongye and protect the safety of myself and those around me. But as for the credit of this mission, to be honest, I am not very interested. Those are not important to me. Bailey Chongqing loosened his arms and stared at Zhang Yi and said, Then what are you doing for? Nothing. Zhang Yi smiled and said, Just because I am Chinese, that's it. After saying this, Bailey Chongqing looked at Zhang Yi with respect. So that's the case. I'm really sorry. I originally thought you had other purposes. Zhang Yi smiled and said, Of course I have my own ideas, but at this time, if people lose their sense of collective honor, then how can the eggs under the overturned nest remain intact? He put on his combat uniform slowly and carefully fastened the nylon buckle. But this time, with the Celestial God Squad as the main force, I will not be the first to expose my identity. When necessary, I will take action. You can rest assured about this. But I hope you can keep it a secret for me for the time being. Zhang Yi winked at Bailey Chongqing. Bailey Chongqing lowered his head and sighed. As the captain of the investigation team of Blizzard City, concealing important information made him feel uneasy. But this is a secret between him and Zhang Yi, and he must keep it secret. However, he also vaguely understood that this secret could not be concealed forever. When that time comes, how will he face Zhu Zheng? This question gave Bailey Chongqing a headache. Sure enough, human greed is a terrible thing, which will leave you with endless troubles. For now, we can only take one step at a time. Don't worry, I understand. I believe you won't let people down. Zhang Yi smiled more deeply and did not answer Bailey Chongqing's words. He would not guarantee anything. He could only say that he would kill as many Eclipse Moon members as possible on the premise of ensuring the safety of himself and Liang Yu. Chapter: Armed Helicopter. Everyone changed into brand new weapons and equipment, and was equipped with communication and imaging equipment. Except for Zhang Yi and Liang Yu, almost everyone carried a large tactical backpack. At this time, the convenience of the space alien was revealed. Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li looked at Zhang Yi, and after hesitating for a while, they decided to carry the weapons themselves. After all, they did not fully admit that Zhang Yi was their captain. When necessary, they would choose to leave Zhang Yi and act on their own. Zhang Yi was too lazy to take the initiative to help them. Give up the heart to help others and respect their fate. This is responsible for others and yourself. After the combatants arrived in Jiangning City, Zhu Zheng personally guarded the combat command center and was responsible for commanding the on-site tactics. Therefore, this operation can be regarded as a large-scale mobilization of Blizzard City. It can be seen how determined Zhu Zheng is to win this operation. Just after 0 o'clock in the morning, Zhu Zheng's voice came from the communication equipment of Zhang Yi and others. Outer City troops, get ready to go. Zhang Yi and others stood up immediately. The 13 of them were divided into groups, planning to take the Blizzard special train to the battlefield. However, at this time, Bailey Chongqing came over and said to everyone, Let's go, I'll take you to the airport. Zhang Yi and others. Airport? Zhua Feiyu asked curiously, Can we still take a plane to Jiangning City in this temperature? Bailey Chongqing smiled faintly. Military aircraft are different from civilian aircraft. There are several extremely cold-resistant fighters in the region. They are the models we introduced from the technology of Fremons in the north. Although they can't fight for a long time, they are still okay for short distances. Speed is the essence of war. Taking a special train is too slow, and Jiangning City has been invaded. Taking a special train may be discovered. Fremons is a northern country, and most of its territory is in the cold zone, so their technology in the field of cold resistance is very advanced. Everyone nodded in understanding, and then followed Bailey Chongqing out of the combat center. After leaving the combat center building, They immediately took a black chariot to the southeast area. Less than 20 minutes later, they arrived at an airport. However, it was dark at this time, and there was no plane on the airport. There was only a huge dome upside down in the airport. Bailey Chongqing got out of the car first and led everyone to the dome-like airport. There were heavy guards here, and at the door were dozens of Yanyan troops wearing black combat uniforms. After Bailey Chongqing walked over and exchanged information with them, the other party gave them permission. Zhang Yi and others followed Bailey Chongqing into the interior space of the airport. In the huge dome-like space, they saw more than a dozen huge fighter planes. There is no such thing as a transport plane that is too large. That kind of thing is basically difficult to fly in extremely cold temperatures. Zhang Yi looked carefully and saw 3 types of fighter planes inside the airport. Although he didn't know much about airplanes, he had read some military books and could recognize their types: bombers, fighters, and armed helicopters. Bailey Chongqing led them to an armed helicopter. He gestured to everyone, "Go up." Zhang Yi looked at Liang Yu, Chen Xiaoxiao, and Peng Li and walked into the helicopter without saying much. The interior space of this combat helicopter is not small, enough to accommodate more than a dozen of them, and it seems relatively spacious. The others did not delay and quickly got on the helicopter. However, Zhuo Feiyu was more cautious and asked Bailey Chongqing, "Can we ensure that we will not be hit in the air?" When flying at high altitude, if attacked, almost all the people on the plane will be killed. Even the most powerful enhanced alien will be smashed into mud if it falls from 1,000 meters. However, Zhang Yi is not worried about this problem. With the existence of the alien space, he can take Liang Yu and Huahua to escape even if the plane crashes at high altitude. Bailey Chongqing laughed when he heard Zhuo Feiyu's question. Before Bailey Chongqing could speak, the veteran Yu Xingyang from Sichuan City explained, "Don't underestimate the defensive power of the armed helicopter. This is one of the most elite armed fighters in the country, in long number 17. Coupled with the factor of the flight altitude, I can't think of any alien who can shoot it down." Zhuo Feiyu said calmly, "It's better to be safe than sorry." It was also his first time to ride an armed helicopter, so it was inevitable that he was nervous. After all, before the end of the world, he was just an ordinary office worker. "Then at least tell us where the parachute bag is?" Yuan Hao asked weakly. "In case of any problem, we can still parachute." Bailey Chongqing couldn't help but smile. "Don't think about this question. At this temperature, parachuting like you non-professionals is basically seeking death, and you will freeze into popsicles in the air. But if you really want to care about this, there is a parachute bag behind you." Yuan Hao found a camouflage. Yuan Hao's backpack. He quickly took it and handed it to Xia Lingling beside him like offering a treasure. "Lingling, here you go." Xia Lingling frowned, snatched the umbrella bag, and threw it on the ground. You are too timid." I'm just worried that something will happen to you." "Pft, pft, pft. You are such a scoundrel. Can't you say something nice?" Xia Lingling stretched out her hand to pull Yuan Hao's cheek, making his face, which was already as pale as Mr. Kongshiu, even paler. The people on the helicopter looked at the two of them as if they were watching a show. Although they were in the end times, the emotions between people were extremely cold, but it did not mean that everyone did not desire sincere emotions in their hearts. Therefore, many people saw the play between Yuan Hao and Xia Lingling, and there was an obvious smile in their eyes, as well as a little envy. Zhang Yi accidentally turned his head to look out the window, and just happened to see a few familiar faces appearing next to another helicopter not far away. The long silver hair fell softly along the back, and the slender and fit figure made most men feel jealous. There is no doubt that he is the captain of the Tianqian team, Deng Shintong, the son of the Deng family in Blizzard City. At this time, Deng Shintong led the 9 members of the Tianqian team and walked towards the helicopter, talking and laughing. Their actions were separated from Zhang Yi and others. Zhang Yi and his team were the vanguard, responsible for luring Eclipse Moon to go out. Deng Shintong and his team waited for the other party to expose the target and then took action according to the situation. However, compared with the worries and tensions of several teams in the outer city, the members of the Tianqian team were obviously much more relaxed. Some of them had smiles on their faces, and some still looked like they hadn't woken up, as if no one took this mission too seriously. After all, in Blizzard City, their Tianqian team has always had the highest mission completion rate and the lowest combat loss ratio. In other words, there has never been a mission that they cannot complete. In addition, this time it is a large mobilization of the headquarters, with full preparations and Zhu Zheng personally sitting in to guide. No matter how you look at it, this mission will not be very difficult. A messy-haired team member yawned. Let's finish the mission early today. I'm waiting to come back to have dinner with my wife. Another team member laughed. It's not even 1 o'clock yet. Your wife can't wake up when you come back. Deng Shintong had a calm smile on his face. Hey, don't be careless. The opponent this time is not weak, so be careful. Got it, Captain? The team members agreed with a smile. At this time, a black extended car stopped next to the helicopter. A bodyguard came over and opened the door. An old man in a white Tang suit walked down from it. It was the head of the Deng family, Deng Yuanbua, one of the giants in Blizzard City. Chapter Attack. Seeing Deng Yuanbua, Deng Shintong also hurried over. Uncle, why are you here in person? Deng Yuanbua looked up at his most respected nephew and said with a smile, this mission is very important to you and our Deng family, so I came here to tell you a few words. Deng Shintong smiled and said, Uncle, don't worry, I am confident that I can eliminate this group of bandits within 3 hours. Deng Yuanbua sighed. You can't always be like this. Listen carefully to a few words. Uncle, please tell me what you want to say. I will definitely keep it in mind. Deng Shintong's expression became serious. Deng Yuanbua smiled, but his tone became low. Don't underestimate those Japanese Ronin. You haven't dealt with them on the battlefield before, so you don't know how crazy they are. They are perverts who can sacrifice their lives for their so-called beliefs. Although I hate those people, I have to admit that they are terrible. So, you have to be extremely careful in this battle. Deng Yuanbua opened his eyes, and his slender pupils burst into a wild light. As long as you successfully annihilate the Eclipse group in this battle, your reputation will spread throughout the Jiangnan region and even the world. At that time, our Deng family will have room for operation. Deng Shintong's face was still full of confidence, but his eyes became much more resolute. Deng Shintong nodded slowly and said to Deng Yuanbua, Uncle, please rest assured. I will definitely win this battle beautifully. Deng Yuanbua smiled and nodded with satisfaction. That's good. I'm waiting for the news of your victory here. After Deng Shintong said goodbye to Deng Yuanbua, he turned and walked towards the armed helicopter. As if he had a feeling, he looked at another helicopter in the distance and saw Zhang Yi leaning against the window and looking over here. Deng Shintong smiled brightly and stepped into the helicopter. Zhang Yi smiled lightly, and there was no complicated thought in his mind. After all, the affairs of the young masters of the big families have never been related to him. There are only 2 things he needs to do. The first is to protect himself, Liang Yu and Hua Hua. The second is to kill the members of the Eclipse group. What are you thinking about? Liang Yu's cold voice sounded in Zhang Yi's ears. Hua Hua also raised her head and looked at Zhang Yi eagerly. Zhang Yi looked back at them, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Nothing. I just wonder, how strong is the leader of Eclipse, Fingguangduan Ren? Zhang Yi was telling the truth. After seeing some images of De Gonghui Yanjin and others, he had a basic judgment of the strength of Eclipse in his heart. The strength of such an organization is between the investigation team and the strength of the investigation team. However, the strongest person always determines the upper limit of the organization. Zhang Yi had a feeling that the guy must be extremely dangerous. He even thought that if he could not be killed in this mission, then the operation would not be considered a success. Chun Xiaoxiao and Peng Li on the side heard this, but they looked disapproving. That kind of thing, just leave it to the God Squad to deal with it. Peng Li shook her index finger, looking like an experienced person, and instructed Zhang Yi. The most important thing for people is to recognize their own abilities. Even if we, the aliens from the outer city, can dominate our respective territories, we are ultimately not as good as the regular army. But this also has its advantages. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. We just need to help the God Squad lure the enemy and delay time. Zhang Yi's smile became even stronger. He nodded to the two of them. Well, you are right. I think so too. At this time, at the Combat Command Center, Commander Zhu Zheng had already sat in front of the big screen. The monitoring equipment carried by everyone recorded the scene in front of them, and he had a full view of it. Beside Zhu Shuai, Chief of Operations Tu Yunlai and Secretary Lan Xincheng were ready to arrange actions according to the changes on the battlefield at any time. Now, let's go. Go to Jiangning City. Zhu Zheng gave an order, and 2 armed helicopters rose up with a boom. The huge fan blades rolled up the wind, and the ceiling of the airport spread out like wings to both sides. The 2 armed helicopters left one after the other and flew towards Jiangning City. Zhu Zheng glanced at the time and ordered, "We can also take action there." Jiangning City. It was midnight, early in the morning. All the members of the Eclipse group did not go to bed. They had just cleaned an area and were cleaning the battlefield. This was a small organization in Jiangning Square, and more than a dozen men had been killed. In the corner of the warehouse, a mother hugged her daughter tightly, looking at the Japanese in front of her with horror. Fengguang Yuanren glanced at them, his eyes calm. Whether it is a living person or a dead person, there was not much difference in his eyes. "Have they all been cleaned up?" Fengguang Yuan asked calmly. Behind him, Jinguji Saikairo pushed his gold-rimmed glasses and said impatiently, "All the guys who resisted stubbornly have been killed. Only the 2 of them are left. What should we do?" Fengguang Yuan sneered. "Do I even need to ask this question?" He spread his hands and turned to walk out of the warehouse. "Nobunaga, send them off," Fengguang Yuan said to the samurai next to him. Tsukamoto Nobunaga looked at him, as if he was a fool. "Are you an idiot? Let me do this kind of thing. A noble samurai will not attack unarmed women and children." Fengguang Yuan curled his lips and pointed at him with some dissatisfaction. "Nobunaga, you can't change your bad habits. This kind of pretentious idea will hurt you sooner or later." Tsukamoto Nobunaga said disdainfully, "People like you can't understand the thoughts of samurai." The 2 chatted casually and left the warehouse. The mother and daughter in the warehouse looked at the Ronin in the distance, and their nervous mood relaxed a little. They didn't expect that they would let them go. But just when they thought they had survived, a girl who looked about 18 or 19 years old and wearing a black mask came over. She looked at the mother and daughter indifferently, raised her hand and shot out 2 silver needles, piercing the throats of the mother and daughter. "Ninjas will not be merciful," Naru's Hanakyo said indifferently, and then disappeared into the shadows. Naru's Hanakyo. Fengguang Yuan and Nobunaga were still arguing about the so-called Bushido concept. At this time, the shrine maiden Takeuchi Mayumi, who had been silently following Fengguang Yuan, let out a light exclamation. Then she slowly raised her head and looked up into the sky. "Jean, there is danger coming." The laziness on Fengguang Yuan's face suddenly converged. Everyone also looked towards the sky with Takeuchi Mayumi's voice. "A crisis from heaven, right?" Fengguang Yuan laughed teasingly. I get it. Those guys in the Jiangnan region must be unwilling to give up and are going to attack us again." Jinguji Saikairo said with an impatient look, "This is really troublesome. We won't be killed this time, right?" "Of course not." Fengguang Yuan smiled confidently, with a smile that was a little crazy and cruel. "They're the ones who will die." Chapter 644. Sea of Fire. The armed helicopter flew across the night sky. Its hard shell froze into a layer of frost in the cold night, but it did not affect its fast flight. However, in this environment, its endurance was greatly challenged, and it was probably only suitable for short-distance flights. 10 minutes later, Zhang Yi and his team flew all the way from Blizzard City to Jiangning City. Just as they arrived above Jiangning City, through the ice flowers on the window, they could vaguely see the warm yellow light being lit up on the ground. "Huh? What is that?" "A bonfire party." Zhang Yi leaned over. At the same time, a faint rumbling sound came from his ears. Everyone heard this thunder-like movement and couldn't help but get close to the window to watch. When they looked carefully, they couldn't help but be shocked. A vast sea of fire. Jiangning Square, The area in the center of Jiangning City has now turned into a huge sea of fire. Time to time, there will be violent explosions coming from the ground. The sound reaches the sky, as loud as thunder. What's going on? Zhang Yi frowned, a little surprised. At this moment, Zhu Zheng's voice sounded in the communication equipment at the right time. Did you all see the explosion in Jiangning City? Don't be surprised. This is the first step of our plan. First, use the Tsonglong 5 bomber to bomb the entire Jiangning Square. After this round of bombing, there will be no hiding place in Jiangning Square. Even if we can't eliminate a few Eclipse Moon Ronin, at least we can force them out. Zhang Yi immediately thought of the bombers he saw in the airport, and he understood. Eclipse Moon has special instruments and equipment that can block satellite monitoring signals within 5 kilometers. But Blizzard City also has means to blow up the entire Jiangning Square for you. All troubles come from insufficient firepower. Blizzard City will not lack ammunition. If it weren't for the difficulty in transportation, Zhuzhen would probably have people pull hundreds of artillery and directly raze the entire Jiangning Square. Yu Zhengyang looked at the explosion below and clenched his fists excitedly. Now it will be much easier for us to move. If we are lucky, we can blow them all to death. Zhua Feiyu on the side reminded calmly, it is better not to have too good fantasies about this kind of thing. If those guys can be killed so easily, we don't need to prepare for so long before coming here. Yu Zhengyang took a deep breath. I know.
You don't need to remind me about this.
Peng Li and Zhang Yi were relatively close, so they watched from the same window. Seeing the vast sea of fire below, she couldn't help asking, this kind of large-scale fire, unless the other party is very familiar with the terrain and finds an underground shelter. Otherwise, it will be difficult to survive, right? Zhang Yi did not answer the question directly. He asked back, have you heard of napalm? Huh? Peng Li blinked her big eyes. She had never heard of such a thing. Zhang Yi pointed at the sea of fire below. To put it simply, it's an incendiary bomb. It doesn't have the destructive power of a bomb, but it can cause large-scale burning. Even if it's the headquarters, it's impossible to really use all bombs to bomb the entire area within a radius of 5 kilometers. Therefore, napalm bombs are still used in large quantities. This is to consume oxygen and destroy the food and other resources in Jiangning Square. Force the Eclipse group to come out and fight us. Zhang Yi laughed. I don't believe that those guys will be easily burned to death by the fire. Especially in this kind of weather now. Peng Li blinked doubtfully and then cast her eyes on Chen Xiaoxiao. Chen Xiaoxiao nodded. He is right. But next it will be much easier for us to find the enemy. At least we won't be ambushed by the other party in advance and fall into the troublesome situation of street fighting. While speaking, the armed helicopter had stopped 10 kilometers away from Jiangning Square. Since the ability of the other person is unknown, it is natural to keep a certain distance before landing. Avoid landing in a box. After the fire, a drone flew over Jiangning Square. A spherical device emanated a red glow from the bottom of the drone. Then, an invisible radio wave instantly swept across the entire Jiangning Square. At the Combat Command Center, a staff member reported to Zhu Zheng and Tu Yinlai. The communication blockade of the Jiangning Square area has been completed. They can't use communication equipment to contact, let alone ask for help from the outside world. Zhu Zheng nodded. Very good. Let them become headless flies first, and then crush them one by one. First, the other party loses the means of communication, while the communicator in the Jiangnan area is not affected, so that the initiative can be taken in this battle from the beginning. After the helicopter landed, the headsets of several captains sounded from the headquarters. Zhang Yi team, you enter the square area from the southeast. Wu Shifeng team, you enter the square area from the west. Zhua Feiyu team, from the north, enter the square area. Remember, your mission is to attract firepower and delay Eclipse's people. If an encounter occurs, the first priority is to protect your own safety, not to take the initiative to attack. Zhang Yi said calmly. Got it? He took out 2 silver-white pistols from the alien space. This was the White Owl made for him by Liu Karen, which could hold 20 rounds of holy silver bullets. Zhang Yi walked over and opened the door of the cabin, turned around and said to Liang Yu and others, let's go. Liang Yu followed Zhang Yi without hesitation. Peng Li and Chen Xiaoxiao looked at each other. They were also very nervous at this time, but this nervousness was also accompanied by excitement. Danger and benefits coexist. As long as they can successfully complete this mission, the gains will be huge. The two nodded, cheered each other up, and then followed Zhang Yi with tactical backpacks on their backs. On Zhang Yi's tactical helmet, there was the location and path to enter the square marked by the headquarters for him. So, he didn't have to worry about getting lost here. At the same time, he could also check the routes of the other two teams clearly. The three teams presented they set out on a triangular route. There is a reason for this. Through the three-point positioning method, the other party's position can be confirmed. After all, within a radius of 5 kilometers, the detection effect of the satellite has been blocked by the other party's technical means. Therefore, the location of the other party's general can only be found through manual methods and calculations. To capture the thief, first capture the king. Killing or capturing Feng Guangyuanren alive is the top priority of this mission. The three teams set off one after another, and not far away, another armed helicopter also slowly landed. On it are the members of the Tianjin team. Seeing the three outer city teams heading towards Jiangning Square, Deng Shintong's eyes were full of amusement. They will not be able to come back in 9 out of 10 cases. However, if they can persist and wait for our support, it proves that they are indeed promising talents. At that time, at least they can be absorbed and join the Yanyan troops in Blizzard City. It is not impossible for those who perform well to join the investigation team. The latter that Deng Shintong was referring to was naturally Zhang Yi. Ever since they met in Blizzard City, Deng Shintong had admired Zhang Yi very much and had always wanted to bring Zhang Yi into the Heavenly God team. "Let me see how you can perform this time," Deng Shintong said with a smile. Then they began to calmly wait for the headquarters to issue the order for them to attack. Chapter Soul Beast. After Zhang Yi and his team got off the helicopter, there were no more orders from the headquarters. Zhang Yi understood that the next order would have to wait until the members of the Eclipse group appeared. The sea of fire in front of him had gradually died down. After all, the power of the napalm bomb could not last too long. The ultra-low temperature of -60 to 70 degrees Celsius at midnight was enough to make the flames disappear quickly. However, no one knew the location of the members of the Eclipse group at this time. I hope I won't be too unlucky and meet their main members. If that's the case, I can only choose to retreat a distance first, Zhang Yi murmured. He couldn't fight the entire Eclipse group alone. After Zhang Yi and his team arrived at the designated location, they had to make decisions according to their own will. Zhang Yi did not rush forward, but stood cautiously in place, observing all the scenes in front of him. The Jiangning Square had been burned into a dilapidated ruin at this time, and gray-black smoke rose into the sky. Zhang Yi asked Huahua on his shoulder, "Huahua, can you smell the breath of living people?" Huahua's eyes swept across the ruins in front of him sharply. It sniffed and finally shook its head helplessly. Zhang Yi sighed and said, "Is it because of the fire?"
Meow.
After the fire, the smell became complicated, and it was difficult to distinguish the breath of living people from it. Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li came over. "Captain, what should we do next?" Zhang Yi thought for a moment and made his own choice. "Just wait here for them to come." Chen Xiaoxiao. Peng Li. Chen Xiaoxiao couldn't help but say, "Is there a possibility that we are here to encircle and suppress them, instead of them encircling and suppressing us?" Peng Li said, "Yes. Is it appropriate to wait here?" Zhang Yi ignored them and began to carefully check the surrounding environment. He is good at long-range attacks, not close combat. Once he is attacked by close combat masters such as Daiko Kuinjin or Tsukamoto Nobunaga, it may be dangerous for him. About 0.01% of the danger probability. This must be prevented. So he had to figure out the environment here and then choose a safe position to wait for the opportunity to snipe. Using the Thunderbolt and the Origin Bullet, his range can completely cover the entire 5-kilometer range of Jiangning Square. Zhang Yi answered them casually, while checking the surrounding environment. "Don't forget, their intelligence-gathering ability is particularly strong. I guess now they have known our location and have dispatched troops to deal with us. I am not familiar with this area, and they have the advantage of the first move. So, I plan to use static to overcome dynamic. Zhang Yi's eyes wandered around for a long time, and then determined the location of his ambush, a burnt black commercial building. Zhang Yi turned around and gave orders to several people. I will ambush on the roof, and your task is to protect my safety nearby. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he opened the dimensional door without waiting for Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li to agree. Liang Yu, you are responsible for protecting me closely. Liang Yu nodded. There was no need to say more about this matter. The two and Hua entered the dimensional door and appeared on the top of the building the next moment. Only Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li were left, staring at each other on the snow below. Why did he leave us here? Peng Li looked incredulous. What kind of captain is this? He is so irresponsible. She stamped her feet in anger. Chen Xiaoxiao raised her eyebrows and looked around cautiously, saying, he knows very well that we are only in a temporary cooperation relationship, so he didn't intend to care about our ideas from the beginning. It's just that now everyone is in a dangerous battlefield. His approach is indeed a bit naive. Peng Li sighed. Then what should we do? Chen Xiaoxiao said, let's do what he said first. Leaving the group rashly will increase our danger. The two had no choice but to ambush around the building and wait for the people from Eclipse to come to them. In fact, their conversation could be heard clearly by the combat command center. Zhu Zheng crossed his arms and couldn't help sighing. This Zhang Yi is too cowardly. But he is very smart. This is indeed a good way to test the other party's ability. They all knew that Eclipse had a strong ability to obtain intelligence, but no one knew what this ability was. Zhang Yi chose to hide outside Jiangning Square and not take the initiative to attack. If the opponent can still clearly find their location, then it can be basically concluded that the opponent's ability is a terrible ability similar to the nature of prophecy. So, what are the other two teams doing? Zhu Zheng looked at the other two outer city teams. The people on Wu Shifang and Zhuo Feiyu's side also maintained an extremely vigilant attitude as they moved forward. Everyone knew that this operation was full of dangers and did not dare to have any. Without any carelessness, Wu Shifang and his 4 companions also arrived at the designated location. There was not much verbal arrangement between the few people. Compared with Zhang Yi's side, the people in other teams had already formulated a battle plan. After all, not everyone is like Zhang Yi, who is fully confident in his own strength. They need to plan a good team battle to ensure that there is no mistake. After entering the Jiangning Square area, the first thing to do is to reconnaissance. Mo Zhongning from Wu Shifang's team came out. His eyes were fixed on the large ruins in front of him, and then he slowly squatted down. He was wrapped in a heavy battle suit, and even his hands were covered tightly by the wide sleeves. But when he put his right hand on the snow, everyone around him clearly saw that his sleeves were shaking restlessly. A purple light condensed in his palm. Then a gray rodent drilled out of his palm. Mo Zhongning, a release-type ability user, ability code name Soul Beast. He can transform his supernatural power into different animals, and these animals are like his clones, and can share the 5 senses with him. Wu Shifang looked at him and murmured in his heart, it's really convenient to use supernatural beasts for reconnaissance. But since he is the leader of a force, his ability must be more than just reconnaissance. He must also have strong combat power. While others were curiously looking at Zhuo Feiyu, the small soul beasts in his palm actually crawled out like a gray stream of water. In just a dozen seconds, hundreds of them appeared. They stood on the snow and turned their heads to look at Mo Zhongning, with human-like light flashing in their eyes. Go, find them, Mo Zhongning said in a low voice. The soul beasts squeaked and then rushed into the burned square. Soon, they disappeared in the ruins. Zhuo Feiyu's team did not have similar reconnaissance methods, but they had a veteran who was proficient in reconnaissance. Yu Xingyang had been a scout for 7 years, so he was responsible for leading the way in front and carefully searching for traces of the Eclipse group. Chapter The battle begins. A certain area in Jiangning Square. 13 members of the Eclipse group gathered here. Although they were surrounded by smoke and black dust everywhere, they did not look embarrassed at all. It seemed that they had already taken shelter before the bombing. 12 people formed a circle, and in the middle was the middle-aged Uncle Jinguji Saikaro. He habitually pushed his gold-rimmed glasses and then took his hands out of his suit pockets. His slender and skinny index finger slowly raised, and a little golden light appeared on the fingertips. His eyes suddenly became sharp, and his right hand quickly moved in the air, while chanting a spell. When the soldiers fight, all the formations are in front of the line. Note: this is a wrong translation by Neon. The 9 Secrets comes from Biopuzzy. The song version is, when the soldiers fight, all the formations are forward, and the Daozong version is, when the soldiers fight, all the formations are forward. The golden light condensed in the air and quickly turned into a huge golden pentagram. In Jinguji's eyes, golden light flickered. As he pointed his right hand to the sky, the golden pentagram shattered and turned into tiny spells that went straight up into the sky. A moment later, with the location of the Jingu Temple as the center, a majestic mist began to spread around. In just a few minutes, the entire Jiangning Square was shrouded. The 3 teams discovered the abnormality at the first time and reported to the Combat Command Center. I found an unknown fog. The coverage area is very large. It should be the people of Eclipse Moon who took action. Seeing this, Zhu Zheng immediately said, "Everyone be careful to prevent the aliens of Eclipse Moon from taking advantage of the fog to attack." Without him saying more, the aliens in the outer city would be more careful themselves. This ability is not mentioned in the intelligence at all, Zhua Feiyu said with a serious expression. Sure enough, they still kept a lot in the first battle. Veteran Yu Xingyang said calmly, "This is just a trick to cover the sight. It is not offensive." In the other team, Mo Zhongning smiled coldly. "The thick fog can block people's sight, but it can't block soul beasts. It's better to say that this battlefield is more conducive to my performance." In any case, the 2 teams were slowly moving towards Jiangning Square. On the contrary, Zhang Yi built a wall on the roof of a building at the edge of Jiangning Square, with no intention of moving forward. He just waited for the enemy to come to him. And he was sure that the enemy would come to him. At this time, the 3 investigation teams had the authority to act independently. In the state of unclear situation ahead, Zhu Zheng would not verbally order them to do anything. This is the battlefield, and the ability to adapt to circumstances is the most important. Zhu Zheng chose to trust these strangers in the outer city. After Jinguji used his ability, he put his hands back into his pockets. A gray bird landed on his shoulder. It opened its mouth and spit out 12 identical gray crows from its mouth, which landed on the shoulders of others. The impatience on Jinguji's face never disappeared. Next, this battlefield will become an unknown area. Mayumi, it's up to you. Feng Guangyuan smiled and waved at him. Thank you for your hard work. Jinguji, your methods are still as reliable as ever. Tisk. Jinguji was too lazy to pay attention to him and walked aside silently.
The shrine.
Maiden Mayumi Takeuchi glanced at Feng Guangyuan, and after getting his approval, she slowly walked to the center of the circle. Her hands turned transparent and slowly took out the scroll from her head. The scroll unfolded on the snow, but it was not stained with any snowflakes. Even the snow flying in the air could not fall on it. It was as if this scroll did not exist in the world. Mayumi Takeuchi knelt down on the snow. She raised her right hand, and a slender brush, with the end held by the little ghost, appeared in her hand. This time, she did not take out the bright red ink because the previous reserve had been used up. So she stretched out her left hand, revealing her white arm. The slender brush in her right hand stabbed her arm without hesitation. Puff. Blood flowed like a stream, but not a trace of blood was wasted. The little ghost at the end of the brush sucked it with big mouthfuls, and the blood gathered on the tip of the brush. Takeuchi Mayumi looked extremely sacred and began to write on the long scroll. After a long time, the scroll was already covered with dense blood words. Feng Guangyuan and Jinguji came over and looked at the divine text on it. Takeuchi Mayumi's face was a little pale, and it was obvious that the use of this power was also very exhausting for her. But she still said calmly, "The enemy has come, in the west and north, with 4 people each. In addition, there are enemies lurking in the dark who have not yet appeared. Jinguji frowned. Only 2 teams are coming? The number of people this time is much less than last time. Maybe they are all elite. Feng Wangyuan smiled. Deep, maybe they are just cannon fodder. To lure us out and test our abilities. Jinguji pushed his glasses. It doesn't matter. As long as Mayumi is here, we won't be at a disadvantage tactically. He looked at Takeuchi Mayumi. Mayumi, come on. Tell us how to act. Takeuchi Mayumi held up the scroll and looked towards the west. Okay. In the center of the battle formation, the middle school boy 40 Minobu Satoru sat cross-legged on a cardboard box with his eyes closed. His ability, Enlightenment Demon, has been activated. The 13 members of the Eclipse organization are connected by a red thread in his field of vision, and the point of convergence is on him. With his existence, no matter how far apart the 13 are, they can get in touch in time. In other words, the information shielding function of the Jiangnan district has no effect on them. Feng Wangyuan smiled even more. These guys must have set a trap waiting for us to jump in. They don't understand who is the prey and who is the hunter. Let's have a good fight. It's time to let the leaders of the Jiangnan region know that Eclipse Moon is something they can't afford to offend. Combat Command Center. Zhu Zheng frowned as he looked at the thick fog that appeared in front of him. In addition to fighter planes, the armed forces they sent out also had low-altitude unmanned reconnaissance aircraft. But at this time, the cameras of these reconnaissance aircraft were all covered. Their advantage in local operations was gone. Next, they could only rely on the portable cameras of the Outer City Alien Team to grasp everything that happened on the scene. As Mayumi Takeuchi's divination ended, the members of the Eclipse Moon group also received their combat orders. Everyone was very optimistic about this battle, because as long as they acted according to Mayumi Takeuchi's predictions, they had never failed. One after another, the aliens left the place. With the existence of Grey Crow, the misty fog seemed to have no restrictions on them. However, Jinguji stared at the map on his mobile phone and frowned slightly. Why are there only soldiers coming from 2 directions? From this angle, there is just a vacant position. Is this place deliberately left for us to escape, or is there something else? Feng Wangyuan smiled slightly, walked over, and patted his shoulder. There is no need to follow their pace. We must seize the initiative on the battlefield. Just trust Mayumi's divination. Jinguji frowned and thought for a moment before nodding. You are the captain, and this problem is left to you to solve. Don't be careless. One careless move can kill someone. Feng Wangyuan waved his hand at him, motioning him to leave quickly. What a bad mouth. He cursed in a low voice. Chapter You have only one opponent. Western Front. Wu Shifang and the others did not rush forward, but silently waited for Mo Zhongning's reconnaissance results. The soul beasts have already moved forward from the ruins, heading towards the area within the cone range in front. They share the 5 senses with Mo Zhongning, and as long as they detect the enemy's traces, Mo Zhongning will sense it at the first time. Wu Shifang and the other 2 were guarding Mo Zhongning, and the other 4 were hiding behind a bunker in the ruins. Suddenly, a dazzling white light appeared in the vision of a soul beast. The next moment, it completely disappeared in the ruins. Mo Zhongning opened his eyes suddenly. One of my soul beasts was killed. The expressions of Wu Shifang and the other 2 suddenly became solemn. Did you find the people of Eclipse Moons? Let me take a closer look. A soul beast was killed.
But
Mo Zhongning was not in a hurry. He could summon 138 soul beasts at a time. Now that the location of the dead soul beast has been determined, other soul beasts can gather in that direction. Then judge the identity of the person coming. So, Mo Zhongning immediately mobilized the 10 soul beasts around the soul beast and began to explore intelligence. The other soul beasts were ordered to retreat by Mo Zhongning. The area west of Jiangning Square is not large. Soon 10 soul beasts ran here from the ruins, and waiting for them was a thick gun barrel. Mo Zhongning immediately recognized his identity. In his right hand was a huge black hand cannon, and the attack method was supernatural shells. The gunner of the Eclipse Moon organization, Kurosawa Akira. The moment the soul beast appeared, It was killed by Kurosawa one shot after another. Mo Zhongning knew that he had little time left and quickly used the remaining instant perspective of other soul beasts to observe the strange people appearing around. In addition to Kurosawa Akira, there were two other figures walking slowly towards his side. One was a spirited young man with a sofa-like hairstyle, Sakuraba Yeshiguang. As for the third person, when he saw his body's shape clearly, Mo Zhongning's pupils suddenly shrank. It's him. Damn it. How could we be so unlucky? As soon as he finished speaking, all the soul beasts he sent out were wiped out. Mo Zhongning stood up in fear, gasping for breath. Wu Shifeng and the other two were shocked when they saw this. Mo Zhongning, what did you see? What on earth is it that scares you so much? Mo Zhongning's eyes flashed with resentment, and he gritted his teeth and said, We are facing that monster here. Dagonghui, Yanjin.
When?
Dagonghui Yanjin said this. The faces of Wu Shifeng, Li Weihai, and Jia Heading also became solemn. They have all seen the strength of Dagonghui Yanjin. In the first battle, he easily wiped out 2 alien teams with his own strength. Among the known enemies, he is definitely the most dangerous one.
He is.
Also the guy that everyone is most reluctant to meet. But seeing Mo Zhongning's resentful look, Wu Shifeng snorted coldly and despised him in his heart. Even if you meet a powerful guy, you don't need to be so scared, right? They all have one head on 2 shoulders. I don't believe that the 4 of us are not his opponents. As a power-type alien of the reinforcement system, Wu Shifeng is also a hero. His strength is above Li Guiqiang and Meng Shucheng, who were killed by the Great Factory Yanjin. With the support of capable teammates, he believes that his team can fight with the Great Factory Yanjin. Mo Zhongning covered his forehead and gritted his teeth and said, but he didn't come alone. He brought 2 helpers. Even if it's 4-3, it's hard for us to beat them. We might die. But don't forget, our goal is not to defeat them. Just hold them back for a while. This should be possible. Wu Shifeng said very calmly. The captains of the 3 teams all have extraordinary courage, and the candidates for regional assessment are not chosen casually. Wu Shifeng's character is bold and careful, and he is not afraid of danger. When he said this, Wu Shifeng had already sent information to the headquarters. The Western squad has encountered the enemy. 3 people have been found so far, namely Okokai Nobutsu, Sakuraba Yoshimitsu, and Kurosawa Akira. After receiving the intelligence from the headquarters, dozens of analysts in the Combat Command Center immediately began to operate on the computer. Analyze the combat power of these 3 people and use the algorithm to come up with the best response plan. Zhu Zheng looked at the report submitted by his subordinates and immediately said to Wu Shifeng, Very good, fight them according to the original plan. Hold them back and try to force them to use their superpowers. Create an opportunity for the God Squad to break through. Understood. Wu Shifeng ended the conversation with the headquarters and then looked at the 3 people next to him. Since you are here today, let's put life and death aside for the time being. Fight with them to your heart's content. For Wu Shifeng, Jiangning is his home. Once this home is gone, his relatives and friends will be wiped out by the Eclipse Moon. So we must fight to the death. Even if he has to sacrifice his life for this, it is worth it. Mo Zhongning and the other 2 may not have such a great spirit of dedication as him. But now that things have come to this, they cannot retreat. Deserting in the face of battle will not only ruin their reputation, but will also be liquidated by the Jiangnan region. It is better to fight for a future. Mo Zhongning gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice, Okay, then fight them. I want to see how much weight these bastards from Japan have. The 4 people formed a diamond formation according to the original plan, with the enhanced alien Wu Shifeng blocking in front, Mo Zhongning and Li Weihai on the left and right, and Jia Heading behind the crowd. Soon, a tall shadow slowly emerged from the fog. As the great workshop of the Yokozuna, Enjin, his figure appeared in front of everyone first. Then, it was Sakuraba Yoshiko and Kurosawa Akira, with a playful smile on his face. With the help of the Grey Crow, they can clearly find the enemy even in the thick fog, so they came to Wu Shifeng and others effortlessly. When he saw the 4 people, De Gonghui Yanjin suddenly frowned, looking disappointed. Aren't they the elite sent by Jiangnan district? But why do they look so weak? Sakuraba Yezagwang crossed his arms and said with a smile, maybe they came to test our cannon fodder.
Just deal with them casually.
I think their main force is behind. De Gonghui Yanjin nodded. In that case, let's not waste time with them. Seeing that the Eclipse Moon members did not take them seriously, Wu Shifeng and the other four were angry. Although they could not speak the same language, their tactical helmets had translation functions, so it did not affect their understanding of each other's expressions. After all, they were also the heroes of the outer city. Even if they were not as well trained as the elite of Blizzard City, they were not easy to be controlled. Wu Shifeng sneered, for people against 3, the advantage is mine. You seem to have misunderstood the situation. After saying this, Sakuraba Yezagwang, who looked a bit like a killer, waved his hands repeatedly. No, please don't misunderstand me. He and Kurosawa Akira took a few steps back in tacit understanding. Then Sakuraba Yushir pointed at Daikokainjin and said, your opponent is only him. We promise not to interfere. A playful light flashed in his eyes. As long as you have the ability, you can kill him. Chapter Unpredictable. The northern team also encountered their enemies. In the Jiangning Square, which is only 5 kilometers in radius, encounters are very easy to occur. Moreover, the people of Eclipse Moon have the Grey Crow to lead the way. Therefore, before Zhua Feiyu and his team found Eclipse Moon was the first to discover their traces. There are only 2 enemies here. A short-haired strong man with a fierce square face and rustic black-framed glasses. And a gangster with a yellow hedgehog head and a metal baseball bat. According to the information obtained before, Zhua Feiyu and others also immediately knew the identity of the other party. The 2 people on our side are Kamaya Negemichi and Akutsu Shinichiro. Zhua Feiyu was slightly relieved, because according to the information, the combat power shown by these 2 people in the first battle was not too terrifying. At least compared with the big factory Yanjin that Wu Shifeng and his team encountered, these 2 did not show particularly strong combat power. At the Combat Command Center, Zhu Zheng saw the news reported by the 2 teams and began to analyze it in his mind. 5 of the 13 members of the Eclipse group have appeared so far. In other words, there are still 8 people who have not appeared. Even if non-combat personnel are removed, there should be at least 6 combat-type aliens. Zhu Zheng crossed his hands to support his chin, staring at the shots of all the aliens on the big screen with a cold look. It depends on what's going on with Zhang. Unexpectedly, they had been waiting for a while in the southeast direction where Zhang Yi was. As a result, no member of the Eclipse group appeared. Zhang Yi set up his gun and aimed at the surrounding space on the top floor, just waiting for an enemy to appear and shoot him first. This is the edge of Jiangning Square, which is limited by the fog. He can still observe the space within 300 meters around. However, since this place has just been bombed, the surface still has high temperature, so the infrared device cannot be used. After absorbing part of Yuan Kong's power, Zhang Yi's various abilities have been greatly improved. Therefore, even if it was just an ordinary sniper rifle, it would become a powerful weapon against aliens in his hands. Moreover, this Thunderbolt was a super hot weapon that Liu Karen transformed with the ability of God Machine Control and was in perfect harmony with him. Thunderbolt plus Precision Shooting plus Holy Silver Bullet. Even a Delta-level alien could be killed in one shot. On both sides of him, Huahua and Liangyu remained vigilant, guarding against sneak attacks. Huahua squatted on the balcony, her amber eyes scanning the surroundings like a radar. The hunting instinct of animals allowed it to quickly detect all the creatures around. As for the good sisters Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li, they were cautiously waiting under the building at this time. The appearance of enemies on Wu Shifeng and Zhua Feiyu's side made them more cautious. They all felt that the enemy would appear soon. But as time passed, the sound of fighting and shouting over there appeared in their communication devices, and even the fog around them had not changed at all. What's going on? Zhang Yi couldn't help but frowned. According to common sense, since Eclipse Moon has a strong reconnaissance ability, he must have discovered the arrival of himself and others. But why did he wait for so long and the enemy didn't make a move.
Could it be that?
Zhang Yi's pupils shrank, and a possibility came to his mind. The ability they possessed saw through Zhang Yi's strength? So, out of fear and vigilance, they didn't dare to send people here? What kind of ability do they have? Zhang Yi murmured to himself. He was alert and thought that the opponent was unpredictable and too scary. This is the case in the world of aliens. If you are not careful, you will lose your life and be wiped out by strange and unknown abilities. Because the mutation of each alien is unknown, all kinds of strange and mysterious abilities may appear. Even Zhang Yi, a top-level Delta-level alien, dare not guarantee that he will never be killed by a low-level alien. So he said to Liang Yu and Hua Hua beside him, "Be on guard. Once we find anything wrong, the first thing we have to do is to protect our lives." Liang Yu and Hua Hua's expressions became much more serious when they saw Zhang Yi being so cautious. Hua Hua directly transformed into a giant form, making a vigilant with sound from his mouth and looking around with his big head. He was afraid of missing any enemy who might attack from the dark at any time. On the side of the Eclipse organization, with the reminder of Jinguji Saikairo, Fengwangyuan Jin also noticed the empty spots on the map. He touched his chin and murmured, "Mayumi's divination will not be wrong." In other words, there are no enemies between the east and south. What tricks are the other party planning? Fengwangyuan's expression was playful. He didn't like the feeling that things were out of his control. But at the moment, he had no idea what the Jiangnan region was up to. At this moment, Tsukamoto Nobunaga, who had not attacked, came over. "No need to be so troublesome. I'll go over and take a look." He turned his head and looked at Mayumi Takeuchi. "After all, Mayumi also said that my advantage today is in the southeast." Fengwangyuan smiled slightly. "Indeed, since Mayumi said so, there must be no problem. Nobunaga, that direction is up to you. See what tricks the other party has." He waved his hand and said to the couple Takashi Takizawa and my wife Nanako on the side, "Teretsa's my wife. You just follow Nobunaga?" "Yes, boss." Takashi Takizawa and my wife Nanako had no objection, and the two followed Nobunaga, who looked casual, in that direction. The gray crow on their shoulders guided them in the direction of travel. The two sides met on the battlefield, without too much nonsense, just a fight. Wu Shifeng was the first to encounter the three people including De Gonghui Yanjin, and the battle was also started from them. The Combat Command Center and the Tianxin team can clearly see the scene of their battle. Even the most arrogant Deng Shintong restrained his usual cynical attitude at this time and focused on the image on the screen. Arrogance is not arrogance. Deng Shintong's capital of arrogance is that he never neglects any task. If not, how could he have occupied the top of the scoreboard of Blizzard City for 3 consecutive months? To describe it with the words of a great man, despise the opponent strategically and pay attention to the opponent tactically. Only in this way can you become a great man. Before the true foundation of Eclipse Moon is tested, even if all 3 troops in the outer city are sacrificed, the Tianxin team will not take action. Everything is for the final victory. Chapter Clone. On Wu Shifeng's side, the battle was about to break out. Sakuraba Yezugwang and Kurosawa Akira quietly retreated to the back as if nothing had happened. In order to show that they would not interfere in this battle, they actually came to a few dozen meters away and found a collapsed pillar to sit down. Wu Shifeng stared at the giant in front of him and thought in his heart, "These guys don't take us seriously. But this is just right, 4 against 1, and we can even kill him with our combined abilities." Thinking of this, Wu Shifeng couldn't help but feel a little excited. If they can kill a core member of Eclipse Moon, they will get extremely generous points rewards from the regional headquarters. Dagongkai Yanjin stared at them, raised his arm lazily, and waved at them. "What are you waiting for? Are you afraid of 4 against 1? As an orc-type alien, Dagongkai Yanjin didn't even transform. Whether it was words or actions, they revealed extreme contempt. "Damn it." Wu Shifeng gritted his teeth. "Then come on." He stretched out his hand and took down the huge weapon box from behind. It was a black metal box. If you don't look carefully, you might even think it was a small coffin. Boom. The huge weapon box fell to the ground with a bang. Wu Shifeng's body also underwent a strange change at this time. His flesh began to twist and wriggle, and soon it began to split from the middle. A large mass of yellow flesh fell off along half of his body, and then fell to the ground stickily, like dough with too much water. But soon, the sticky object swelled up and gradually turned into the appearance of a person. It was a naked person who looked exactly like Wu Shifeng. This is Wu Shifeng's ability, Duplicate Shadow. Although he was naked, his appearance and body shape were exactly the same as Wu Shifeng himself. This is a part of his body. Wu Shifeng, formerly a courier in Jiangning City. He grew up in an orphanage and grew up in loneliness since childhood, so the loneliness in his heart made him extremely eager for love and companionship. Therefore, his ability is to split himself and get another reliable comrade in arms. He believes that for a powerful enhancement system user, what can be better than having two bodies to play the advantages of superpowers? So now, the one who appeared in front of the great worker Yanjin was no longer a powerful enhancement system user, but two. The great worker Yanjin opened the weapon box, which had two sides. He took out a huge silver ox horn bow from it and handed it to the clone. And he himself took out two huge copper hammers from the other side. Lei Gu Weng Jinxue, the weapon of Ma Yuan, the general of Fu Bo in the Han Dynasty, the first of the 4 fierce 8 hammers in the legend, and the weapon of Li Yuanba, the world's #1 warrior. The size of the copper hammer is twice that of an adult's head. Each one is made of solid alloy and weighs more than 100 pounds. It is equivalent to holding 2 adults in your hand as a weapon. This kind of weapon originally only existed in legends. But in this era of mutation, there are really people who can use it freely. And the silver ox horn giant bow in the clone's hand also looks full of oppression. Wu Shifeng stood in front of everyone and said in a deep voice, "I will hold him back from the front. You can use your own means to attack." The others did not speak, but their eyes were fixed on Dagonghui Yanjin. However, the 2 Ronin who were watching the battle from a distance did not dare to neglect it. If they really believed the words spoken by the enemy, they would be pure fools. "Oh, it looks very imposing," Dagonghui Yanjin commented lightly. He assembled his dragonfly cut, and with a casual wave of his hand, there was an amazing sound of breaking the wind. "Go." As soon as Wu Shifeng finished speaking, he rushed towards Dagonghui Yanjin like a whirlwind. At the same time, his clone also drew his bow and arrow. The huge silver ox horn bow was like a full moon. With a whoosh, the sound of breaking through the air was like the long cry of an eagle. The speed of the arrows was exactly the same as Wu Shifeng's own speed, and they attacked Dagonghui Yanjin from 2 directions. Dagonghui Yanjin's eyes condensed, and he swept across with a dragonfly cut, and the blurry arrow flew away. On the other side of his body, Wu Shifeng's heavy hammer had already hit his waist fiercely. When using cold weapons, masters will choose blunt weapons. Because once hit, even if it is only a part of the body, it will quickly make people lose their combat effectiveness. Wu Shifeng attacked from both sides, and it was difficult for ordinary people to react. Dagonghui Yanjin was not a speed-type alien, so he could not knock the arrow away and then dodge. But facing the attacking heavy hammer, he only made a simple move. A thick palm quickly and steadily took Wu Shifeng's thundering blow. Bang, bang, bang. The huge impact force made Dagonghui Yanjin retreat 3 steps. He looked at Wu Shifeng with a little surprise. Not bad power. But Wu Shifeng was frightened by this scene and broke out in a cold sweat. He attacked with all his strength, but was blocked by the opponent with one hand. What a strong body and strength. Unexpectedly, Dagonghui Yanjin did not get angry, but instead ignited his interest. He smiled and waved to Wu Shifeng, "Come again." Add a picture of Bian Junwu. Wu Shifeng gritted his teeth, roared, and rushed up again with 2 heavy hammers in his hands. 2 Lei Gu Weng Jin hammers fell from the sky and hit Dagonghui Yanjin's forehead with the force of thunder. This time, Dagonghui Yanjin's legs were spread apart on the ground, like 2 pillars rooted in the ground. This is the most classic posture in sumo, which can hold the earth and make it immovable. The heavy hammer fell fiercely, and Dagonghui Yanjin swung the dragonfly cut in his hand again. Clang! The sound of metal collision was deafening. The big factory Yanjin just knocked Wu Shifeng lightly, and he was shocked and flew more than 10 meters away. Wu Shifeng felt his back was numb and his palms hurt badly. When he looked down, he found that his hands were shaking and bleeding. Is the difference in strength so big? Wu Shifeng was stunned. Since the end of the world, he has been in Jiangning City and has always been respected for his strength. It was the first time that he felt ruthlessly crushed in terms of strength. But fortunately, he was not alone. While he was bearing the main attack from the front, his teammates also responded. A black crab appeared out of thin air on the back of the big factory Yanjin. The crab's eyes flashed with a strange red light, and it became more and more urgent. When the big factory Yanjin reacted, a violent explosion sounded on his back.
Got it.
Mo Zhongning showed a happy smile at the corner of his mouth. His soul beast was shaped by supernatural powers. In addition to being able to detect, it also has a soul beast that can self-destruct. And the attack just now was combined with the ability of Li Weihai next to him. Li Weihai, like Zhang Yi, is an extremely rare space-based alien. But his ability is different from Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's ability is to store, and his ability is to transfer. In space, he can mobilize objects of a certain mass, even humans. The attack just now was a combined attack skill launched by him using his own ability to put Mo Zhongning's self-destructing soul beast on the body of Dagonghui Yanjin. Chapter Earth-Walking Immortal. After the smoke and dust of the explosion, the face of the big worker Yanjin was extremely ugly. A large area of his back was charred, and the back of his clothes was burned. Mo Zhongning couldn't help but raise his mouth when he saw this scene. It seems that he is not as scary as imagined. Sakuraba Yezagwang, who was watching the battle on the side, saw this scene and slapped his forehead helplessly. A super mole with blood-red eyes and more than 2 meters long. Jia Heading from Huazhou City, an orc-type ability user, with the ability code name Earth-Walking Immortal. No matter how powerful you are, you can't use it without a foothold. Jia Heading made a harsh and weird sound in the form of a mole. Then, while Dagonghui Yanjin was sinking to the ground, its sharp claws stabbed at Dagonghui Yanjin's body. The target was his most vulnerable part, the anus. Even a man with iron bones has a soft rectum, the director of the anorectal department of the African savannah. No matter who it is, this set of anorectal surgery will definitely not be able to withstand it. Although the method of digging out the anus is despised by people, in a battle of life and death, any way to kill the opponent is the best. This is also the first time that Dagonghui Yanjin felt the breath of danger, and his anus tightened suddenly. Go to hell. The giant mole let out a piercing cry, and its claws, which were as sharp as a saber, stabbed at the chrysanthemum of Dagonghui Yanjin. While his teammates were fighting in front, Jia Heading was waiting for such a great opportunity.
Sing.
This scene, even the people in the Combat Command Center couldn't help but stretch their necks, expecting Jia Heading to succeed in one blow. But at this moment, a deafening roar broke out in the sunken cave. Dagonghui Yanjin finally used his ability, the mythical creature, Chaohu. The hot air gushed out from his limbs and directly rushed the giant mole that Jia Heading had transformed into. A gust of hot wind rushed up from the cave, making Wu Shifeng and others outside feel like they were burned by flames. A huge brown figure rushed up to the sky and then fell heavily to the ground. At this time, the great engineer Yanjin had transformed into a Thai tiger, holding a huge dragonfly cutter and showing his fangs to Wu Shifeng and others. This time, he was really angry. No one can stay calm after being almost anally dug out. Under the ground, Jia Heading did not stop. He began to dig the ground frantically. He. I'm underground. What can you do to me? As long as you give me a suitable opportunity, I will definitely pull your intestines out. These guys are going to be unlucky. Don't they know that the big worker likes this suit the most? Kurosawa Akira nodded. With his body shape, it is too difficult to find a suitable suit. This one was specially customized by a tailor. Sakuraba Yezagwang hugged his chest and said seriously, "However, the guy who came this time is indeed stronger than the last time." The big worker Yenjin raised his head. His eyes were fierce, as if he wanted to eat people. He tore off the torn clothes, revealing his majestic body. It was not the kind of muscular appearance, but fat and strong, with a big belly. Those who really understand fighting know that this kind of body shape is the most suitable for fighting. De Gonghui Yenjin looked at the pieces of clothes in his hand, stared at Wu Shifang and others coldly, and said, "You bastards actually ruined my last suit. I will tear you apart." Although his back was charred, there was no scar. Mo Zhongning's explosive soul beast didn't even make him feel much pain. As a Yokozuna, what he most wanted was a strong and huge physique and the power to destroy everything. After becoming an alien, he really got all of this. Mo Zhongning swallowed his saliva. My self-destructing soul beast didn't blow him through. The power of his self-destructing soul beast is no less than that of TNT explosives. Wu Shifang noticed De Gonghui Yenjin's anger and said to his teammates, "The attack is effective. Let's continue." He also wanted to replicate the results of the first attack. Although his hands were already covered in blood, he still clenched the two heavy hammers and rushed towards the great workshop Yenjin. The clone also drew his bow and arrow, and another arrow whizzed towards the great workshop Yenjin. Needless to say, Mo Zhongning and Li Weihai cooperated again. They only waited for the moment when the great workshop Yenjin was distracted by Wu Shifang, and then put the self-destructing soul beast on him. Even if the results were limited at the beginning, they had a lot of people and could keep trying. Then they would definitely be able to find the weakness of the great workshop Yenjin. But this time, they miscalculated. The great workshop Yenjin put away his playful thoughts, raised his hands to cut the dragonfly, and took the initiative to attack. The more than 2-meter-tall Yokozuna swung the more than 3-meter-long dragonfly and chopped it down on Wu Shifang's head. Wu Shifang's reaction speed was not slow either, and he raised his hammers with both hands to block in front of him. Bang! At the moment of the weapon's collision, Wu Shifang felt as if his arms were hit head-on by a truck weighing tens of tons. His hands were numb all of a sudden, and the heavy hammer in his hand was directly shaken away. Wu Shifang reacted quickly on the verge of life and death, and quickly rolled on the ground to avoid the falling dragonfly. The ground that was burned into scorched earth by the incendiary bomb was directly shattered by this blow. Large pieces of soil and gravel rushed into the sky and fell like a waterfall. Completely not on the same levels. Wu Shifang broke out in a cold sweat. He only took over twice, and the opponent didn't really move for the first time, but his hands were already crippled. If he continued to fight, he would definitely die. Not much, he still had hope. That was his teammates. The arrows of the clone shot through the soil and shot towards the big factory Yenjin. Mo Zhongning and Li Weihai did not waste the momentary opportunity that Wu Shifang had won and had already placed a self-destructing soul beast on the head of the big factory Yenjin. The crab clung to his head tightly and then began to self-destruct. The master craftsman Yenjin had a cold face, and he casually blocked the incoming arrow with his right hand. Then he pulled the self-destructing soul beast off his head with his other hand, and then put it on the palm of his fat left hand and squeezed it hard. Puff! The self-destructing soul beast exploded. But it didn't explode completely. It was as powerful as TNT explosives, but at this time it was like a fart, making a dull sound. In the end, only a cloud of black smoke rose from the palm of the master craftsman Yenjin. There was no expression of pain on his face, and he spread his palm very casually, with the fat palm flesh intact. With a mocking smile on his face, the master craftsman Yenjin deliberately opened his hand to show Mo Zhongning and the others. "Is this your method? It's too weak. You dare to come and hunt us with only this level. Aren't you going to die?" This terrifying power and defense made the three people stunned. How can they fight with the gap in absolute strength? At this moment, the ground beneath the feet of the great workshop Yenjin suddenly collapsed, and his huge body sank into it. A huge gray monster appeared in the soil.
It was a
super mole with blood-red eyes and more than 2 meters long. Jia heading from Huazhou City, an orc-type ability user, with the ability code name, Earth-Walking Immortal. No matter how powerful you are, you can't use it without a foothold. Jia heading made a harsh and weird sound in the form of a mole. Then, while Dagonghui Yanjin was sinking to the ground, its sharp claws stabbed at Dagonghui Yanjin's body. The target was his most vulnerable part, the anus. Even a man with iron bones has a soft rectum, the director of the anorectal department of the African savannah. No matter who it is, this set of anorectal surgery will definitely not be able to withstand it. Although the method of digging out the anus is despised by people, in a battle of life and death, any way to kill the opponent is the best. This is also the first time that Dagonghui Yanjin felt the breath of danger, and his anus tightened suddenly. Go to hell. The giant mole let out a piercing cry, and its claws, which were as sharp as a saber, stabbed at the chrysanthemum of Dagonghui Yanjin. While his teammates were fighting in front, Jia Heading was waiting for such a great opportunity.
Seeing
this scene, even the people in the Combat Command Center couldn't help but stretch their necks, expecting Jia Heading to succeed in one blow. But at this moment, a deafening roar broke out in the sunken cave. Dagonghui Yanjin finally used his ability, the mythical creature, Chaohu. The hot air gushed out from his limbs and directly rushed the giant mole that Jia Heading had transformed into. A gust of hot wind rushed up from the cave, making Wu Shifang and others outside feel like they were burned by flames. A huge brown figure rushed up to the sky and then fell heavily to the ground. At this time, the great engineer Yanjin had transformed into a Tide Tiger, holding a huge dragonfly cutter and showing his fangs to Wu Shifang and others. This time, he was really angry. No one can stay calm after being almost anally dug out. Under the ground, Jia Heading did not stop. He began to dig the ground frantically. He. I'm underground. What can you do to me? As long as you give me a suitable opportunity, I will definitely pull your intestines out. Chapter Xia Lingling. Dagong Yanjin's eyes were fixed on the ground. The next moment, he raised his right leg and stepped down hard. Boom! With his right foot as the center, the ground shattered like glass, and the soil deep in the earth began to explode, and the entire land was no longer intact. Jia Heading, who was more than 10 meters underground, felt that the ground had become compacted, and tens of thousands of tons of soil were squeezed on him at once. He let out a wail. Puff! With a sound, blood gushed out of his mouth, and his internal organs seemed to be squeezed into a ball. Just more than 10 meters underground, he lost the ability to move. Although he has not died yet, he cannot maintain the transformed state for a long time. If no one comes to save him, he will die of serious injuries and lack of oxygen. Fortunately, at this time, Jia Heading did not forget that the people at the headquarters were watching here. He used his last strength to send a distress message to the Combat Command Center. Headquarters. Need support. After receiving the message, the staff in charge of his line immediately reported it to Zhu Zheng. Zhu Zheng frowned upon hearing the news, but he did not give any response. Because so far, no more useful intelligence has been obtained. They must ensure that the personnel sent by the Tianqian team can deal with the great factory Yanjin. What's more, behind him, there are 2 members of the Eclipse Moon who have never taken action from beginning to end. Tu Yunlai spoke at this time. The task here is a bit difficult to complete. We must send enough investigation team members to solve it. Do you want to send Liao Honglei? Liao Honglei is the deputy captain of the Tianqian team, and his combat power is second only to Deng Shintong. And his ability is more suitable for dealing with the great factory Yanjin. Zhu Zheng shook his head slowly and firmly. Wait and see. There are still 2 people who haven't taken action. He noticed the existence of Kurosawa Akira and Sakura Bayushir. The abilities of these 2 guys are to cooperate with the great factory Yanjin. If Liao Honglei faces them, he will not have an advantage in terms of ability. Zhu Zheng crossed his hands and supported his chin, looking at another battlefield with a cold look. We can't use the God Squad easily. We must ensure that we get enough intelligence. In the northern battlefield, the battle was carried out simultaneously. This is Zhua Feiyu's team, and the opponents are Kamaya Negemichi and Akutsu Shinichiro. Kamaya and Akutsu are not as interested in one-on-many battles as the Great Workshop. They are real villains who like to enjoy the joy of killing their opponents. As long as they can win, they will use all means. So the moment they appeared on the battlefield, the battle had already begun. Kamaya Negemichi, an orc-type ability user. Ability code Big Snake. He rushed out of the fog, his body twisted and deformed in midair, his head turned into a flat white snake head, his hands and feet gradually degenerated, and white scales covered his whole body. Finally, he turned into a giant snake that was 15 meters long. The snake roared and rushed towards the 5 people, its bloody mouth opened, and inside were layers of densely packed inverted teeth, which made people shudder. Once bitten, unless the body is torn apart, there is absolutely no way to escape from its mouth. This visual pressure has already made Zhuofeiyu's team feel a huge trouble. The 5 people quickly dispersed to avoid being crushed to death by the big snake. The ground where the white snake passed left a terrifying gully. Zhuofeiyu remained calm in the face of danger, calmly took out his tactical backpack, and then threw out dozens of black rifles from it. Each gun head was equipped with a bayonet that flashed with a faint blue light. Xia Lingling. Zhuofeiyu shouted at Xia Lingling. Xia Lingling frowned. I know. As soon as she stopped on the ground, she stomped her right foot on the ground and rushed towards the big snake that came back. She didn't look like a weak woman, but she didn't expect that the power she suddenly burst out was so strong. Facing the huge white snake, she cleverly dodged its attack from the air and came to the tail of the snake. She held the snake's tail with both hands and shouted, "Ah!" Then, she actually swung the 15-meter-long monster up, turned it a few times on the spot, and threw it far away. Zhuofeiyu raised his hands, and the 36 rifles were lined up in front of him, and then stabbed at the snake like lightning. These are special weapons, quenched with the most deadly toxins. Just a slight scratch on the skin can kill an adult instantly. When the snake saw these flying guns, a playful look flashed in his eyes. This kind of crude weapon could not penetrate his hard scales at all. However, he was a little surprised by the terrifying power of the little girl. Big Snake. After landing, the tail quickly swung into the air, like a long whip sweeping across the flying guns. However, Zhuofeiyu's eyes were fixed on him. When the big snake's tail was pulled out, his fingers just circled gracefully in the air, and the flying guns circled in the air and avoided the big snake's whip. Telekinesis? Interesting. The big snake made a dull sound, and 36 gun blades were already aimed at its head. Bang! 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 The continuous sound of gunfire rang out, and dense bullets shot at the big snake. It doesn't hurt, the big snake said sarcastically. Zhuofeiyu frowned. The bullet used was the origin bullet distributed by the headquarters, which has a good restraining effect on aliens. But the surface of the big snake is scale armor, which is not affected by the origin bullet. But just when the big snake was proud, its pupils suddenly felt a gust of wind. Swish! A large armor-piercing bullet shot at its eyeball. Although there was a thick protective film on the eyes, it still made the snake's eyes blurry.
Who is it?
The snake looked angrily in the direction where the bullet came from and looked far away. Only then did he see that in the distant direction, a cunning sniper was aiming at him with a sniper. Ordinary sniper rifles certainly can't hurt the snake, but the veteran Yu Xingyang's ability can strengthen the weapon and make it more powerful, just like his ability name, Weapon Master. While the snake was fighting fiercely, Akutsu Shinichiro, who was hidden in the mist, seized the opportunity and aimed at Yuan Hao, who looked the weakest among the few people. He held a metal baseball bat with a ferocious smile on his face and swung it at Yuan Hao's head. When Yuan Hao found Akutsu's attack, he was so scared that his face turned pale. He covered his chest and shouted, "Linglings!" The next moment, Xia Lingling, who was still fighting with the snake, appeared in front of Yuan Hao at a weird speed. Bang! Akutsu's metal bat hit her arm, making a dull sound. Akutsu was a little surprised. He knew very well how powerful the bat was. However, It did not smash the woman's arm and body to pieces. Xia Lingling stared at him, her eyes filled with endless murderous intent. How dare you attack my husband? Do you want to die? Chapter mainly on steady hand. Xia Lingling blocked Akutsu's Shinichiro's metal baseball bat with just her body. Akutsu was surprised. Even among the enhanced aliens, there are people who fight with their bodies and can use weapons to some extent. What an arrogant little girl. Akutsu laughed, and the power in his hand began to increase. He used the metal baseball bat without any rules and smashed it violently. As a gangster, he only relied on two things to fight, that is, experience and momentum. Although he was a street fighter, he could use any tricks, so he was also an expert in actual combat. Xia Lingling snorted coldly and jumped lightly on the ground. Her butterfly steps were very exquisite, and her punching speed was also very fast. Bang! 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 The metal baseball bat and fists kept colliding. There was no expression of pain on Xia Lingling's face, but she became more and more excited as she fought. The contrary, Akutsu felt a huge recoil force from the metal bat, which made him stunned. Is this really a power that humans can have? The power that erupted from Xia Lingling's body was too terrifying. Even for a reinforcement-type alien, it was unreasonable. You know, the reason why Daiko Kuinjin was so powerful was because he himself was a yokozuna who dominated the sumo world with his strength. The girl in front of him didn't look big, so where did her strength come from? Soon, Akutsu found the problem. When Xia Lingling was fighting, her boyfriend Yuan Hao stood behind her and kept cheering her up. He put his hands on his mouth like a trumpet and tried to shout, come on, Lingling. You are the best." Akutsu understood it in his heart. Yuan Hao was undoubtedly an auxiliary alien. His encouragement from behind gave Xia Lingling a boost of strength. Kill the auxiliary first. Akutsu was about to pass Xia Lingling and attack Yuan Hao behind her first. However, Xia Lingling was staring at him intently, and, of course, she would not give him such an opportunity. Don't even think about it. Anyone who dares to touch my husband must die. Xia Lingling's pupils burst into a strange red light, blocking Akutsu's path like lightning. Her speed was so fast that Akutsu could not break through at all. TSK. What a troublesome woman. Akutsu looked disgusted. Well, then I'll kill you first. The western battlefield and the northern battlefield were already in full swing. However, the southeastern area where Zhang Yi was located was unusually calm at this time, which made everyone confused about what was going on. Zhang Yi listened to the battle report over there, and a feeling of suspicion arose in his heart. Why haven't the people from Eclipse come yet? Is there any big conspiracy? Zhu Zheng also frowned in the combat command center. Why is there no one in Zhang Yi's direction? Is there something wrong with Zhang Yi or the people of Eclipse? Tu Yunlai turned his head and looked at Zhu Zheng. Zhu Shuai, the way Zhang Yi and his men play is not conducive to our plan. Order them to move towards the interior of Jiangning Square. Zhu Zheng thought for a while and nodded. He switched to Zhang Yi's communication channel and gave an order. Zhang Yi, you keep moving forward. The enemy's actions in your direction are very strange. Now you move towards the center of Jiangning Square. Check for intelligence. Zhang Yi responded indifferently. Received. After ending the communication, he looked into the depths of Jiangning Square, which was shrouded in thick fog, and everything was unclear. If they move forward, they may encounter Eclipse's large forces. After all, there are still 8 members of Eclipse who have not shown up. Even with Zhang Yi's strength, he doesn't like to take risks. Seeing Zhang Yi's expression was not right, Liang Yu couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? What orders did the headquarters give?" Zhang Yi said, "They said that the enemy's actions here are strange, and asked us to investigate in depth." Liang Yu also frowned. Investigate in depth? In that case, the risk will be greater. She looked at Zhang Yi. What are you going to do? Zhang Yi smiled. What else can we do? Since the headquarters has issued an order, we just do it. Liang Yu was a little surprised. Zhang Yi didn't seem to be such an obedient person. But when she saw the meaningful smile on Zhang Yi's mouth, she suddenly realized that this matter was not that simple. Sure enough, Zhang Yi took them out of the building and found Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li, who were on guard downstairs. Zhang Yi said to them, "There are no enemies here. The headquarters asked us to continue moving forward." Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li looked at each other and thought to themselves, this should be the case. Waiting for the enemy to come here all the time, how can it be like coming here to carry out a siege mission? Well, it's time for us to act. The two women nodded, and Zhang Yi took the lead and walked towards the interior of Jiangning Square. After walking more than 100 meters, Zhang Yi stopped. He pointed to a building in front of him and said, "Look more carefully here. Let's defend here." Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li stared with their eyes wide open, dumbfounded. "What? Right here? Didn't the headquarters tell us to go into Jiangning Square for reconnaissance?" Only Liang Yu couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh secretly. She was too familiar with Zhang Yi's style of doing things. It was really too much to expect him to be so obedient. Zhang Yi said righteously, "This mission is of great importance, and we must act cautiously. So, I decided to observe here carefully before making plans." He only promised Zhu Zheng to move forward, but did not say how far to move forward. Really let him lead the team into the center of Jiangning Square and fight with a large army of Eclipse? He is not stupid. The other side may have aliens close to the level of Ypsilon. Zhang Yi will not be so conceited as to think that he can save everyone's life. Anyway, the aliens in their outer city are not the main force. It's just taking some supplies. Why play with life? Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li were completely speechless.
Chen Xiaoxiao
And the others also knew that the war had already started on the other two fronts. If they did nothing, wouldn't they just watch their mission points being taken away by others? "Zhang Yi, if you do this, won't we come here for nothing?" Chen Xiaoxiao couldn't help but said angrily. She stared at Zhang Yi with a little dissatisfaction. But Zhang Yi said calmly, "There are endless missions. But you only have one life. I think the premise of completing the mission is to protect your own life first."
Chen Xiaoxiao's tone sank.
"But we came here for a purpose. I'm sorry, I can't be as greedy for life and afraid of death as you. In order to survive, I can let the Ronin run rampant on our land." Zhang Yi glanced at her and clapped his hands in approval. "Well said, you are really amazing. So, if you are unhappy, you can leave. I didn't force you to act with me."
Chapter breakup.
Zhang Yi and Chen Xiaoxiao had a falling out. Chen Xiaoxiao was not very convinced that Zhang Yi was the captain. Now seeing that Zhang Yi was so cowardly and delayed her from completing the task and earning points, she was impatient and directly confronted Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was not tolerant of her at all and told her that she could leave if she was unhappy. Chen Xiaoxiao stared at Zhang Yi, clenched her fists, and was furious. She felt that her luck was really bad, and she actually met such a cowardly teammate. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, Peng Li could not help it. She rushed up, put her hands on her hips, and scolded Zhang Yi. "Leave if you want to. Following you as a captain, you can't even get a hair of points. People like you will never accomplish anything great in the future. You have no courage." She snorted coldly and stretched out her hand to pull Chen Xiaoxiao's arm. "Xiaoxiao, let's act on our own." Chen Xiaoxiao frowned even deeper. They act separately. They will not be sure they can handle the masters of Eclipse Moon. But Zhang Yi's way of doing things is something she cannot agree with at all. Seeing that they can only continue to play badly with Zhang Yi if they stay here, it is better to leave and give it a try by themselves. Anyway, their mission is to lure Eclipse Moon, not to defeat it. Even if they encounter members of Eclipse Moon, there is the God Squad to back them up. With this in mind, Chen Xiaoxiao said, "Well, people with different paths cannot work together. Let's separate now." Peng Li pointed her chin at Zhang Yi. "When we get points and take over the territory of Linhai City, you will regret it." After the two of them finished speaking, they turned around and left here without hesitation, moving cautiously into the thick fog. Zhang Yi looked at their backs disappearing in the thick fog and raised his eyebrows. They don't understand at all what level of opponents they are facing. Not everyone has experienced the level of battles in Tianhai City. Maybe for Peng Li and Chen Xiaoxiao, they are already very powerful as Delta-level aliens. But they don't understand that there are also differences between aliens. So far, The boundaries of human classification of aliens are very vague. Although there is no concept of 1 to 9 small levels, there is a very large depth between the same levels. The top-level Delta-level aliens can kill ordinary Delta-level aliens in seconds. Even Zhang-Yi dare not be careless. Why are they so arrogant? Do they rely on the God Squad to protect them? Haha, it's too much of a joke to hand over your life to others. You asked for it, and you can't blame me if you die. Zhang-Yi ignored them, but firmly chose to stay where he was and continued to observe the movements around him. It's not that he is unwilling to contribute to this mission. It's just that he understands that the aliens in the outer city are bait. The real main force of the action is the God Squad. But why can the God Squad wait for an opportunity to take action in the back, but he, Zhang-Yi, can't? When necessary, the combat effectiveness that Zhang-Yi can exert is much more important than that of most members of the God Squad. Therefore, he will not act blindly. Be patient and wait for the enemy to reveal a flaw. There was another question Zhang-Yi hadn't figured out. That was why no one came from his direction? Why didn't they come? Don't they like to come? Zhang-Yi held his chin and fell into deep thought. After Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li left, Chen Xiaoxiao contacted the headquarters as soon as possible. Headquarters, this is Chen Xiaoxiao. We have separated from Zhang-Yi and Liang Yu. They did not obey orders and stayed outside Jiangning Square. Their attitude was too negative. We can't tolerate their behavior, so we chose to leave the team. Over. After listening to this, Zhu Zheng just closed his eyes and said calmly, I know. I agree that you can act on your own. Chen Xiaoxiao was a little surprised. She thought Zhu Zheng would be furious and then settle accounts with Zhang-Yi. But she didn't expect Zhu Zheng's reaction to be so calm. But she couldn't figure out what the top management was thinking, so she had to give up. Zhu Zheng, on his side, checked Zhang-Yi's side and stopped after walking a short distance. He smiled helplessly with his hand on his forehead. I almost forgot that this guy has always been good at counterattacks. It's really hard for him to be a scout. When a general is away from home, he is not subject to the orders of the king. The aliens in the outer city nominally obey the orders of Blizzard City, but it does not mean that Blizzard City can command them without restrictions. Especially now, letting Zhang-Yi go deep into the fog to find the whereabouts of Eclipse Moon is almost equivalent to letting Zhang-Yi and others die. So Zhang-Yi and Zhu Zheng played a word game and just stopped after moving forward for a distance. Zhu Zheng had no choice. However, this incident will not have much impact on the overall operation. The aliens in the outer city are mainly used as bait, and no enemies appeared in the southeast area, so it can't be blamed on Zhang-Yi. Let's wait and see. Zhu Zheng put his hands behind his back and looked at the other two battlefields again. At this time, the battle situation has quickly reached a white-hot state. In the western battlefield, the battle situation on Wu Shifang's side has become increasingly dangerous. The earth-walking immortal Jia Heading was kicked by the great works Yanjin, and his internal organs were shattered. His life or death is unknown underground. Wu Shifang, relying on the joint battle with his clone, couldn't even block the 3 moves of the great works Yanjin. The power of the Yokozuna is terrifying in itself, and after transforming into a mythical creature, Chaohu, his personal bravery alone is enough to sweep away everything.
Hold him.
Mo Zhongning shouted at Wu Shifang. Then he summoned a large number of self-destructing soul beasts, ready to give the great works Yanjin a big wave. Wu Shifang's original body had already had his hands cracked. In desperation, his clone also put away his longbow and chose to fight the great works Yanjin in close combat. He took the Lei Gu Weng Jin Chui from the original body and stood in front of the formation. The clone can be sacrificed, and at most it will only cause Wu Shifang to lose some vitality. But creating the right opportunity for teammates may cause harm to De Gong Hui Yanjin. Seeing the opponent who was resisting stubbornly, De Gong Hui Yanjin showed a contemptuous smile at the corner of his mouth. "Wanna stop me? With you are still far from it." He rushed towards Wu Shifang's original body and clone like a speeding locomotive. Wu Shifang and the clone were on the left and right, roaring and vowing not to retreat. If they retreated, it would be completely over. If they fought hard, they would still have a chance to survive. Boom. A terrifying collision sounded, and Wu Shifeng's clone stood in the front, but his body was twisted into a ball of dough. Wu Shifeng's original body used the clone's force unloading to fly backwards in a mess. He fell heavily to the ground, stretched out his hand to cover his chest, and then he bleed in large mouthfuls. Many of his internal organs had been smashed to pieces. If he were not a reinforcement-type alien, he would have been dead by now. Just as the Great Workshop Yanjin raised the dragonfly cutter in his hand and was about to chop Wu Shifeng to death. The next moment, the Great Workshop Yanjin's body suddenly disappeared from the spot. By the time he came to his senses, he had already appeared in the air dozens of meters high. At the critical moment, it was Li Weihai who used his ability to transfer objects to transfer the Great Workshop Yanjin away. In addition to transferring the Great Workshop Yanjin, Mo Zhongning's self-destructive soul beast also appeared beside him. Densely packed, hundreds of crab-like self-destructive soul beasts fell on him and clung to his body tightly. Boom! Intensive explosions rang out in the air. But as the Great Workshop Yanjin fell from the sky, several people could clearly see that except for some charred hair on his body, there was not even a single wound. Chapter Team God, here we go. Wu Shifeng and his men were filled with despair. How could they fight against such an enemy? Before carrying out this mission, they had also thought about how strong the members of Eclipse Moon were. Even though there was an example of the first battle, that battle itself was a test, and the strength of the alien organizations involved was not at the forefront. This time, the dozen people selected were all top-level in the outer city of Jiangnan District. The four of them fought against one person. Even if they didn't win against a Gonghui Yanjin, they would at least pose a certain threat to him. However, the reality was so cruel. Although they were both Delta-level aliens, the gap in strength was as great as a chasm. He is simply a monster, Mo Zhongning said desperately, covering his head. De Gonghui Yanjin looked at them with interest. Your cooperation is very good. It's just a pity that it's a little too weak. Mo Zhongning's self-destructing soul beast is good at sneak attacks and can sneak attack opponents without knowing it. However, it is difficult to maximize the power of a soul beast with supernatural powers, which enables it to have both reconnaissance and bionic functions. And facing the top beast man, his ability is completely a joke. De Gonghui Yanjin raised the dragonfly cut in his hand. It's almost time to end the fun. I'll send you on your way. He raised the dragonfly cut in his hand and chopped it at Mo Zhongning. His attack was wrapped in the power of thunder, and the terrifying power made the air explode. At this moment, from the distant fog, a meteor broke through the air and hit De Gonghui Yanjin fiercely. De Gonghui Yanjin's eyes condensed. The man's timing was very clever. The moment he swung the dragonfly cut, he attacked the left side of his body. The timing of the attack was very vicious. At this time, De Gonghui Yanjin could not stop his hand to block. His left arm quickly bulged and blocked directly in front of him. Bang! The heavy object like a meteor hit De Gonghui Yanjin's left arm fiercely. The heavy and terrifying force made the Yokozuna's body shake, and he had to retreat more than 10 steps to the side before he could release the force. When Wu Shifeng, Mo Zhongning, and Li Weihai, who were in despair, saw this scene, their eyes gradually lit up with hope. They knew that the God Squad had arrived. The most legendary team with the highest mission completion rate in the entire Jiangnan region. Boom! The flying meteor fell heavily to the ground. When Dagong Yanjin looked carefully, he found that it was a huge anchor tied with chains. Hualala! In the direction where the chain extended, a figure slowly walked in the fog. You can retreat first. Let us handle the next thing. 3 figures appeared in the thick fog. They were all wearing silver combat uniforms, which looked extremely gorgeous, making them look like gods. The person walking in the middle had shoulder-length hair, a feminine face, and a deep smile on his lips. He was one of the 2 deputy captains of the God Squad, Bai Chunyu, who had communicated with Zhang Yi before. There were 2 other people beside him. One had blue hair and a stern face. The other was wrapped in heavy silver armor, with a thick iron chain wrapped around his right hand. He was the one who threw the heavy anchor. Li Taichung raised his hand, shook the thick chain in his hand, and the heavy anchor flew into the air. After drawing a parabola in the air, it returned to his hand as light as a feather and was carried on his shoulder. When the three of them appeared, Daikoku and Jin no longer looked at Wu Shifang and the others. Even Sakuraba Yoshimitsu and Kurosawa Akira, who were watching the battle from behind, narrowed their eyes. The God Squad. It is said that they are very powerful. How powerful are they? We will know after a fight. Bai Chunyu said to Mo Zhongning and the others, "You should leave quickly. Your mission has been completed. The farther you go, the better." He glanced at Mo Zhongning and the others with his peripheral vision. "Otherwise, I won't be able to take care of you when the fight starts." Mo Zhongning and Li Weihai nodded quickly. At this time, they wished they could escape back immediately and never get involved in this battle again. Fortunately, the two of them had a conscience and dragged Wu Shifang, who was beaten like a dead dog, with them before leaving. As for Jia Heading, who was buried deep underground, he was at the feet of the big factory Yanjin at this time. They didn't dare to save him, and they couldn't save him. The three people fled the battlefield in embarrassment. After leaving and reaching a certain area, the medical staff who followed the headquarters arrived with a stretcher. "Quick, save him. He's dying," Mo Zhongning said to the medical staff. The medical staff reached out and touched Wu Shifang's neck and shook his head slowly. "It's no use." As the main force to withstand the frontal attack of the great factory Yanjin, Wu Shifang almost bore all his strength. The last blow had all his internal organs ruptured. Although he died in this battle, as the captain, he did not fail his mission. Mo Zhongning and Li Weihai looked at his gradually cold body silently, without saying a word. After a long time, looking at Wu Shifang, who was put into the body bag, Mo Zhongning said, as if he had lost a soul, "We overestimated ourselves." The northern line. Zhuo Feiyu and others were fighting more and more hard. The big snake incarnated by Shengu and Ei Dao had extremely terrifying defense and attack power, forcing them to devote 3 people to fight. However, after getting familiar with Zhuo Feiyu's gunblade and locking Yu Xingyang's sniper point, Shengu and Ei Dao quickly took the initiative on the battlefield. As a last resort, the third person also joined this battlefield. Wugu City, Lu Yuchen. While Zhuo Feiyu and Yu Xingyang attracted the attention of Shengu and Ei Dao, he quietly hid in the dark and activated his supernatural power. He opened his mouth, and a thin green mist gushed out towards the snake like a long dragon. Soon the snake was enveloped in it. An extremely disgusting fishy smell overwhelmed the snake. "Is this thing poisonous?" The snake immediately realized what this thing was. Lu Yuchen sneered, "No matter how hard your scales are, you still need to breathe, right? I think your internal organs must be softer than your scales." Zhuo Feiyu and Yu Xingyang subconsciously stayed away from the range of the poisonous mist. They knew very well how strong Lu Yuchen's poisonous mist was. 0.01 milligrams could be fatal. Even if they were wearing tactical helmets, they didn't want to be contaminated by it. After the snake rolled in the poisonous mist for a while, it suddenly looked up at the sky and laughed ironically. "Ha ha ha, stupid bastard. Do you think you can kill me?" Instead of avoiding the poisonous mist, it opened its mouth and swallowed a large amount of poisonous mist into its mouth. This scene made Lu Yuchen and the other 2 scalps numb. What is he doing? Kamaya Niweidao's cold vertical pupils looked down at them. "I'm a poisonous snake." Kamaya Niweidao's big snake is a poisonous snake. Chapter 6, 55 Zombies. Lu Yuchen could never have imagined that his ability was completely restrained by the inner and outer paths of Shingu. The poisonous fog was useless when it met the poisonous snake, and he became a useless man. Huh. The big snake opened its mouth and spit out a large mouthful of black saliva at Lu Yuchen. Lu Yuchen came back to his senses from the shock and fled in a hurry. But his speed could not avoid the saliva, and his body was still stained with a large area. The well-made Yanyan standard combat uniform was directly corroded by this mouthful of saliva, and it quickly spread to the inside. Even half of his shoulder was directly melted. Ah! Lu Yuchen let out a wail of extreme pain, rolled on the ground like a maggot, but soon his whole body turned black, and he could no longer move. This is the fate of an alien whose ability is completely restrained. At this time, he is not much stronger than an ordinary person. Yu Zhengyang and Zhuo Feiyu felt their hearts sink. Lu Yuchen was killed in an instant. How can they deal with this prehistoric behemoth with 2 against 1? The big snake stood up half of its body and looked down at them coldly. Next, it's your turn. As for Akutsu Shinichiro, he was fighting with Yuan Hao and Xia Lingling. Compared with aliens like Kamaya Negemichi and Daikokai Jin, Akutsu Shinichiro's ability was mediocre. He was just an ordinary enhanced alien, using a metal bat commonly used by street thugs. At the beginning, Xia Lingling could even take a certain initiative in the battle. Her strange power was very terrifying, which was extremely rare among enhanced aliens. Being able to counter Akutsu's weapon with a simple body. This is all due to Yuan Hao behind her. Yuan Hao looks weak and has no fighting power. But he just stood there, shouting to Xia Lingling to cheer her up. Come on, Lingling. You are the best. As he cheered her up, Xia Lingling's pupils also glowed with a strange purple light, and her strength and speed were greatly improved. Akutsu knew that Yuan Hao was a nanny, but Xia Lingling was in front of him, so he had no chance to break through. So he adopted the simplest and most straightforward way of fighting, to kill Xia Lingling. As the battle continued, the speed of his metal bat swinging became faster and faster. Slowly, the initiative on the battlefield changed. Xia Lingling began to fall behind in the power contest again and again. A worried look flashed in Yuan Hao's eyes. How could this happen? Lingling is clearly invincible. His fair little face puffed up in dissatisfaction. I must not have cheered loud enough. I have to work harder. So he put his hands to his mouth and shouted even louder. A strange purple light appeared on the surface of Xia Lingling's body. She opened her mouth, and the 2 sharp fangs began to grow longer. The nails of her 10 fingers also extended 10 centimeters, and each one was as black as a dagger. At this moment, she looked like a vampire. Ah! Xia Lingling roared and rushed towards Akutsu. Akutsu laughed wildly, waving the metal bat with both hands, smashing her body wildly. The game should end here. Akutsu Shinichiro, a reinforcement-type alien, with the ability code Extreme Hero. As a gangster who has been hanging around the streets of Chiba for many years, fighting is like a commonplace for him. What he longs for is the heroic spirit of becoming more courageous and invincible. His ability is just like his person. As long as the battle continues, his strength will become stronger. It can even be said that as long as a fight lasts long enough, his growth will have no upper limit, and he can even fight against the aliens of the Ypsilon level. Of course, this is only a theoretical statement. But when facing an opponent with a similar strength level, as long as he can hold on to the end, he will definitely win. And now, Akutsu's heroic value has accumulated enough. Akutsu's baseball bat and Xia Lingling collided again. But this time, he cunningly avoided Xia Lingling's claws and hit her side with the baseball bat. It is hard to imagine that a blunt baseball bat can tear a person's body apart. However, the reality is that when the speed is fast enough, the power of a baseball bat is not much different from that of a samurai sword. So Xia Lingling's body was cut off directly from the waist. In her stunned eyes, her body was split into 2 and rushed out under the action of inertia. Bang! Bang! The 2 halves of the body fell to the ground. Yuan Hao's face turned even paler. He clenched his fists and shouted, "You bastard! You dare to hurt my Lingling."
Huh? Hurt?
Akutsu looked at Yuan Hao speechlessly, holding a baseball bat. She was already cut in half, and you call it an injury? Soon Akutsu understood why Yuan Hao said that. Because Xia Lingling, who was lying on the ground, suddenly had hundreds of blood-colored thin tubes extending from the middle of her 2 halves and then connected together.
As
the blood-colored tubes contracted, her 2 halves were firmly combined, and even every muscle was tightly sutured. However, through the horrible wound, You can see that the flesh and blood are lifeless, like zombie meat that has been frozen for many years. Xia Lingling climbed up from the ground. Her expression became cold and terrifying, and she stared at Akutsu.
What?
Akutsu said lightly. It turned out to be a zombie. Yuan Hao, the leader of the aliens in Seeing City, is a control-type ability user. Ability code: Zombie Manipulator. Xia Lingling leaped into the air and returned to Yuan Hao's side. Yuan Hao came to her with a nervous look on his face and reached out to touch her body. Honey, are you okay? Fortunately, you are dead, otherwise, you would have been killed just now. He hugged Xia Lingling's arm with a happy face, but this expression made people feel creepy after considering Xia Lingling's zombie identity. Sure enough, it was right to kill you at the beginning, he said with a gentle face. Even the staff of the Combat Command Center couldn't help but feel nauseous after seeing such a scene. A female staff member covered her mouth and almost vomited on the spot. He actually fell in love with a corpse for so long. Moreover, if Xia Lingling is dead and is a corpse, then who is speaking with her body? This kind of thing makes people feel disgusted and scared as long as you think about it in detail. Akutsu looked disgusted. It turns out to be a dead pervert. And a schizophrenic dead pervert. Thanks for staying tuned. I appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. For more latest content, do comment if you want to listen any other story.
Thanks.